Hey, welcome back, everybody. Hopefully, we're having a wonderful middle of the week, and we're still watching what I think is shaping up to be a pretty good little winter storm. In fact, for some folks, probably a pretty big winter storm during the middle and really the second half of this week. So, starting, we'll say, honestly, today, but especially going into kind of that Friday, Saturday, Sunday time frame right before Christmas week, expecting some pretty good snow totals and some surprise snow, and also, I think, the first snow of the year for some folks, and it really couldn't come at a better time here as we're entering the holiday season. So we're going to break all that down for you in today's video. Now, if you're new to the channel, welcome. My name is Gerald. I'm a meteorology student at the University of North Carolina, Charlotte. I appreciate you joining me, and I will ask, if you haven't already subscribed, go ahead and do so. Hit that bell for the latest notifications, like the video, and comment. Let me know where you're watching from. Alrighty, with that said, let's go ahead and get started. Now, we're going to start with satellite loop like we normally do, starting with the infrared loop. And this basically just shows us cloud top temperatures, which helps us kind of gauge how high these clouds are. And generally, that's a pretty good indicator on how strong whatever storms these clouds are producing are. And you'll notice we've got some pretty high cloud tops over portions of the Ohio Valley and the Tennessee Valley this morning. Pretty good little squall line actually working on through that area, and that will have the chance to produce a slight severe weather threat today, and we'll definitely talk about that as well. And this whole kind of area in general is a front that is currently working on through the eastern half of the country. Now, what that front is going to do is, one, bring some active weather, including some snowfall today and tomorrow. We'll talk about that. But more importantly, what it's going to do is bring down all of this cold kind of air up into Canada, at least some of it. But what's going to bring the rest of it is this secondary area of energy and kind of our second storm that's going to form that's currently over the Rockies. But will eventually kind of work through the northern plains and dive down towards the northeastern United States. And that's when things could get interesting this weekend for some potential snow in places that maybe haven't seen it yet this year, including some highly populated areas. Definitely on the table. Now, starting off with radar after that, and it lines up pretty well, doesn't it? You can see that squall line here with pretty feisty storms really kind of working towards Nashville, working on through Memphis, Little Rock, and we'll cross the state of Kentucky, Tennessee, and even into the rest of Arkansas, Mississippi, and into Alabama throughout the day today. But you will notice on the northern side here, we are getting some snow out of this into northern Ohio, portions of Michigan, seeing some snow showers on your Wednesday. And that will continue throughout the day today. Now, we'll pull this back out west. Here's that second storm system bringing active weather for you folks out here. Heavy rain at the coast, heavy mountain snow, and just plenty of active weather. And like I said, this is very important to watch for us in the east, because kind of how this evolves over the next day or two is going to have big ramifications on the forecast for you folks into the northeast, the northern mid-Atlantic, and kind of into eastern Canada as well, who could get walloped by a big-time winter storm, especially you folks here into Nova Scotia and up into Newfoundland, really watching for some big-time pre-Christmas snow for you. Now, watches, warnings, advisories. Let's just go ahead and admire the southeast for a second. You see all these gray boxes? These are dense fog advisories. And when I say dense, trust me, it is dense. And it's not very often the entire state of South Carolina, Georgia, and North Carolina are under dense fog advisories, at least just about all of North Carolina under it, including all the way down into the Florida Panhandle, Birmingham, Alabama, Knoxville, Raleigh, Charlotte, Columbia. Yeah, we're all getting in on that very dense fog this morning, as we have seen a big return of some moisture out of the Gulf and the Atlantic ahead of our line of storms. That's interacting with some cooler air, and that's helping to really wring out plenty of foggy conditions. Now, that might not be the biggest deal on the map, though, but it is definitely interesting to see. But what is also a big deal is what's happening up north. Plenty of winter weather advisories, winter storm watches now into effect for much of the northern Midwest and into the northern Great Plains. Like I said, this winter storm that's going to work on through here for you folks. I think when I show the snowfall maps, you might be surprised at exactly how much snow you're going to get. Not being talked about a whole lot, but definitely something I think that might sneak up on some folks, if you will. And then plenty of high wind advisories and warnings there as well for that storm that will begin to crank on up here in the coming days. Now, let's go ahead and talk about it a little bit for you here and kind of break down the ingredients for the next two storms. And this is kind of the map right now and what it looks like out there. This is 500 millibar vorticity map, so about halfway up in the atmosphere in terms of mass. Again, remember, it's kind of an exponential decay, so most of the mass is at the surface, and then it gets less, and less. So this is about halfway up in terms of mass, about 6 kilometers up, or a little more than 3 miles up. Now, what you'll notice here is the brighter colors, though, that indicates more spin in the atmosphere. And we're definitely seeing that with our current front. Again, we've got the squall line basically right here on our diverging side of this trough, and where we're getting that PVA, as we call it, or positive vorticity advection. That's what these brighter colors are. That's positive vorticity advecting, meaning moving kind of to the east here, and that's what's firing up all of those storms. Now, that will continue to move east throughout the day today. And by the time we get into kind of overnight tonight and into tomorrow morning, it's going to kind of be two pieces of energy associated with our current storm. We've got the more southern piece. That's going to bring a little bit more of the severe threat and the rainfall threat. But our northern little piece here, you'll notice a defined little shortwave trough in here. That is going to bring more of the snowfall threat. We've got cold air working with this one, and that will help to produce some snow into the interior northeast, especially in those higher elevations here. For your Thursday morning into Thursday afternoon, and then that swings on through. Now that gets us to tomorrow afternoon, and you'll notice here's our next piece of energy. This is the second storm. This is the fun one, and this is the one that we're still kind of having to figure out a little bit. Now, we are confident this is going to bring pretty significant snowfall, again, into this northern stretch of the country. Like I said, on the cold side of that trough is where you're going to see that snow, and that's where you would expect it anyway. But what's going to happen is, notice we've got this piece of energy, but we still have that leftover piece of energy in the southeast from the first storm, and these two are going to try to interact and try to phase together off the northeast coastline right around here. This is Friday afternoon. Again, a whole lot of energy working through the Midwest into the Mid-Atlantic and into the Northeast. And the question is, can we get a storm to form off the coast? I'll go and answer it for you. Yeah, we can. The bigger question is, how close to the coast can we get that storm to form? Now, all winter long so far, the problem has been the track has been too close inland. Now with this one, the problem's kind of the opposite. We've got plenty of cold air. The track's just a little too far out to sea. And the question will be, can we kind of reel it in a little bit here and bring it closer to the coast? And I'll tell you, folks, we are extremely close to somebody getting a pretty good snowstorm. I'm talking half a foot of snow, maybe more. We are not far from a solution like that, and we'll break that down in just a moment. But before we do, let's talk about the first storm a little bit more. Now, we do have a marginal risk for severe weather today into really just much of the state of Tennessee. That does include a slight tornado risk from the Nashville area back down the interstate, Interstate 65 corridor towards the Alabama line. And then even all the way back into kind of Cookeville, Sparta, and then back towards Jackson, Mississippi as well. Not Mississippi, rather. Jackson, Tennessee, rather. Sorry, there's the Jackson, Mississippi, but wrong state there for this afternoon. Now, not a huge threat, but definitely something to monitor. And if we go back to the categorical risk, anywhere in the light green, not the darker green on your map, but the lighter green, those are places that could see a thunderstorm this afternoon. And I would say, if you want to just be super cautious, I would say anyone kind of in this region right into here could see a strong storm this afternoon. Might not quite hit severe criteria. It could, though. But just, be aware of that and be on your A game, if you will. Just have an eye to the radar and just have a way to get watches and warnings more importantly. So definitely watching for that today. But let's go ahead and time it out for you. What is this going to look like in the east? Well, it kind of looks like what it looks like on radar right now. We'll move this ahead into time, though. That squall line continuing to push east throughout the day. And I do think it'll probably weaken a tad as we go into the afternoon and evening hours. Going to lose some of that, heat and support for it as we see some frontalysis, meaning just the front is weakening. Just a tad, but it's at this point into the afternoon hours that northern piece of energy we talked about will help to kind of break out some snow into the northern tier of our map here, into the interior northeast, from portions of western PA into New York State. And I do think it will be elevation dependent in a sense. Now, you don't have to be all the way up on the top of the mountain to see the snow, but if you're in those valley areas, much less likely to see any sort of frozen precipitation out of this, really just a cold rain, but you do see that snow breaking out into the evening hours. Also, some showers left over into the southeast, and it's at this point that I think maybe a rogue storm could try to get going into this area of the Carolinas, down to Georgia, up into Virginia, that could try to become strong to severe. Not a huge threat. But something definitely to monitor there. Now, overnight tonight, we lose any of the severe weather risk, and it all just becomes good old-fashioned snowfall into the interior northeast, much of northern Maine, into the higher terrains of Vermont, New Hampshire, seeing a bit of snow overnight. And it's also at that point that here comes our next storm. So storm number one here, exiting out of the picture overnight tonight, just bringing some snow and some rain to the northeast. Here's storm number two, and look at it. It's a pretty feisty one, isn't it? with some pretty good snow breaking out there into portions of North Dakota, down into Minnesota. And this is a nice shield of snow, folks. Overnight tonight, we'll get this tomorrow morning. This is about 7 a.m. Central Time, 8 a.m. Eastern, and yeah, we've got plenty of snow, even falling at a moderate to heavy clip there through much of Minnesota into Wisconsin, and then eventually by tomorrow afternoon, working into the UP of Michigan. A good little snowstorm out of this, and then even into the northern half of the mitten of Michigan there, likely to get some snow Thursday afternoon, and then this gets us into overnight Thursday and into the very early morning hours of Friday, and I mean very early, like 1 a.m., basically the start of Friday here for later this week. And, definitely a feisty looking storm there. And like we said, this will produce snow into the northern tier of the country, but then we get the question mark on what does it do into the northeast and even arguably down into the mid-Atlantic and portions of the apps from North Carolina northbound. That's the tougher forecast. But before we talk about it, let's go and talk about snowfall totals over the next 48 hours or so. And this is all from the first storm, and then kind of the start of the second storm is what we'll talk about further out west in just a second. Now, the storm tonight and this afternoon, pretty good snowfall totals into the interior, like we mentioned, elevation dependent for sure. The Adirondacks, a good, 2 to 4 inches of snow, some snowfall in here between Erie and Buffalo. Going to see some good snow. The Tug Hill, probably a couple of inches, but I'd say the most safe place to see widespread snowfall totals is going to be into interior Maine, down into northern New Hampshire, northern Vermont, and kind of surrounding areas there. Going to get some pretty good snow. Highest peaks could see half a foot plus, not out of the question out of this first storm. Now, the second storm, again, it's going to start out west. And when I say out west, I don't mean, well, I guess technically out west, yeah, but for our sake here, out into the plains, which is west of many of us in the east. And again, these are some pretty good snowfall totals. We're talking half a foot, widespread 4 to 6, we'll say 4 to 8 inches to play it safe here into northern North Dakota, right into the northern heart of Minnesota. And then we get into Wisconsin and Michigan, folks. These are hefty snowfall totals. National Weather Service is calling for more than half a foot of snow into the heart of Wisconsin. That'll probably be the biggest storm you've seen so far this year. And I don't want to say this flew under the radar. We've been talking a lot about it, but I think these are higher totals than many people may have expected. Even the Chicago area, a couple inches of snow into northern Indiana, and then much of Michigan here into the heart of the state, a good 2 to 4 inches of snow. That'll definitely bring the festive spirit out for anybody who is a fan of that winter weather. All right, that's the first storm. Now, the second storm. This is where things get complicated. I say that's the first storm. That technically was the first and the second storm, but at least in terms of the east here along the eastern seaboard, this will be the start of the second storm. Now, the question here isn't will there be a storm? There absolutely will. The question is when does it form and where does it form is kind of the tougher bit to kind of nail down here, if you will. Now, this is the same map I showed you earlier, 500 millibar vorticity. This is Thursday afternoon, and you'll notice in the northern tier of the country, here's our big piece of energy kind of working on through. Now, what you want for a big storm is you want a negatively tilted trough. This right here is positively tilted. How do I know? Well, you see where these isobars kind of begin to buckle down a little bit like a trough. That's why they're called troughs. Well, it's kind of oriented like this, and that is in a positive facing slant. Now, I guess in your view, it's like this, so I can match it on the map. It's in a positive facing slant. Well, what the kind of order of operations here is you start in positive, and then eventually you get into neutral, and that's what the storm tries to do here into Friday afternoon. Now, it's kind of a couple different pieces of energy. We've got one little trough axis here. We've arguably got another trough axis here. So it's different pieces of energy kind of, I don't want to say fighting with each other, but trying their best to form something. And it's at this point Friday afternoon that what you're going to get is plenty of divergence aloft right into this zone. And that is wind that is separating in the upper levels of the atmosphere. That creates rising motion, and it's going to do it over a pretty favorable area here, a baroclinic zone, as we call it, a natural baroclinic zone, where you have cooler ocean temperatures, actually warmer ocean temperatures and then cooler temperatures over land. That creates an area that just low pressure generally wants to form and forms easier. And that's what's going to happen. Low pressure is going to form. The problem is it going to form too little too late and too far out to sea? Or can all of this energy kind of slow down, crank up a little bit more, become more negatively tilted? As we said, that will increase the lift and kind of slow down the process here a little bit and get a bigger storm near the coast. Now, right now, most of the models are digging this trough, as we say, about down to the Carolinas or so. That's good enough. That'll help us. But the real problem is the speed. They're kind of digging it quickly and getting it on out of here. It's a very progressive flow, as we call it, and we need it to slow down just a little bit. Now, the good news is over the models over the past little bit, they have slowed this down a wee bit. So this is the GFS. The past couple of runs, this is the trend on the model, and watch kind of the trend over, again, the past couple of runs here. So I'm just going to go ahead and keep on going and keep on going and keep on going. Well, what do you notice the trend, especially the past little bit here? One, it gets a lot more kind of stronger here. We get this little belt here of probably a bit of a jet streak showing up on the backside. That'll be good for snow into the mountains of North Carolina and the Virginias, so noting that. But more importantly, the speed of this thing. The further ahead I go, the further back the trough goes. That tells me that the model is slowing it down a little bit, which is good for snowfall potential. Now, let me actually show you one more thing here that I did not plan on showing, but I should have pulled it up anyway because it is going to be very helpful to us. So that's just the operational run. What about the ensemble members? You know, they have their own idea of what's going to happen, and I actually haven't looked at this yet either, so this will be kind of new to both of us. We'll pull this, oh, I don't know why it's, oh, I know the problem, sorry. You get to see some of the behind the scenes stuff, so congratulations. Okay, here we go. So let's look at the ensemble members. And we'll kind of move this ahead in time. So here's our storm system. Again, they're very confident. You see all these little dots. That's where the different ensembles project the low pressure will be. Very confident on its position. This is tomorrow morning through the northern plains. Again, kind of working through that region. But it's as we go further ahead in a time. Right here is when we're going to get that phasing. This is Friday morning, but it's Friday afternoon. Notice the two pieces of energy I mentioned earlier. Piece 1, piece 2. These two are going to try to combine off the coast. And where that happens, that'll really help us determine who gets big snow and who doesn't. Now, you'll notice most of the members have this pretty far offshore, but I'll tell you, if you get some of these members right into this region that are a little bit closer to the shoreline, that would probably produce some pretty good snow in a couple of areas. And you can see that as we move this into some models. So let's take a look at the NAM. We'll start here. This is a mesoscale model, and generally the mesoscale models do a little bit better at handling this than the global model. So let's look at it. Here's the NAM. Again, that big shield of snow into the northern tier of the country. This is tomorrow afternoon. That works on through. And then here we go, Friday morning. This is when things begin to get a little bit more interesting. You have this big shield of snow working down out of the Great Lakes and towards the northeast. At the same time, you have this energy kind of at the coast. And what's going to happen is they're going to try to kind of connect a little bit here. And what that's going to create is an area of increased lift, basically. And here we go. You see that precipitation breaking out over the northeast, the mid-Atlantic. We've got heavy snow falling from New York State. And when I said some people might get their first snow of the year, this is what I meant. Check this out. Philly, New York City, you're getting very close to some snow showers, even trying to get all the way to the Jersey Shore. Here on the NAM model, we've got good snow back into Appalachia, heavy snow into the interior northeast, again, all the way back down towards Philadelphia, New York City, Jersey. And then at the same time, you notice this big storm cranking along the coast. Now, let me back it up just a little bit. This is whenever things get very, very close for you folks in Massachusetts, Rhode Island, Connecticut, right here. And notice this this kind of shield of precip. This is the tough part. Is this going to move a little bit further this way, or will it continue to stay just offshore? That's where the trouble is in forecasting this. But I'll tell you something that's a little suspect to me is you see this big kind of gap in the precipitation. I'm not entirely sure that we'll get that. I think there is a reasonable chance, not a super high chance, but a reasonable chance that this area right in here tries to fill in a little bit on radar, and then that could help to kind of increase snowfall totals along the I-95 corridor. That's the first thing. The second thing is, I'll show you the GFS next, is the trend. The trend is kind of on our side a little bit. We'll start the same time frame here. Here's that northern piece of energy, a little bit weaker looking on the GFS, not quite as amped as the NAM. You kind of expect that. But here we go. Here's the storm. It begins to develop. This is Friday evening, big coastal storm. And look at how close this is. In fact, we are getting some of that snow into Massachusetts. We've got some snow back down towards Philly. We've got heavy snow into the mountains of West Virginia, and even some snow down into North Carolina. Continuing this ahead, I mean, folks, this is as close as it gets to a big storm for you in, Boston, Plymouth, Nantucket, the coast of Maine. This is dangerously close, we'll say. And for anybody who's curious, this is 72 hours from now. I'll tell you, 72 hours is more than enough time for this to trend to a big winter storm into southeastern New England. Now, when I say that, that is not what I'm saying is going to happen. I'm not telling you that this is going to trend and we're going to get a foot of snow in Boston. In fact, I doubt we'll get a foot of snow in Boston. But what I am saying is there have been plenty of times before that when you're this close and you've still got a couple days to go, this can trend in the right direction. And if I show you the trend already on the GFS, let me back this up a couple runs. This is, a couple days ago. This is a closer run, a closer run, a closer run, a closer run, and a closer run. So let me kind of speed through it. What do you notice? It's not big, but there is definitely a trend a little bit closer to land here. And this is heavy snow. This is puking snow, as I like to say, just off the coast of New England. And then somebody that I think is really going to get slammed, Nova Scotia. You're going to get a big time snow out of this for sure. And then probably even up into Newfoundland before all is said and done. I'll show you a couple more models. European model, same general idea. Here we go. And the European, again, trying to fill this in a little bit more compared to what the GFS showed. We've got plenty of, pretty good snow here into the Northeast. I would argue from Philly into up north towards Scranton, much of interior New York. The Apps, North Carolina into the Virginia, seeing some snow. And then here's that shield of snow trying to get going there into southeastern New England as the storm pulls away and really cranks up into Nova Scotia. Final model I will show you. This is the RGEM model, another mesoscale model, and I really like using these. I think they do a good job. Here comes all that energy, and here comes the phasing process, and here we go. This is what I mean when I said I think we could probably fill this in a little bit more on the map. Notice how the RGEM has almost a more confined shield of snow here along the I-95 corridor, Philly up into Jersey, close to New York City, and then into Connecticut, Massachusetts. I think this is a pretty, a fair scenario to kind of predict here, and I think this is probably a little bit closer to the trends the models have been seeing out of this model. And again, this would produce some snow for the first time this year for some folks into probably New Jersey, near Philadelphia, close to New York City, who I know has seen, I think, a snow shower or two this year. But we could even see accumulating snow out of this in some of those places, and then the storm kind of pulls away, and even some back end energy tries to work on through during the weekend. All right, bottom line here. This is DESI. This is a dynamic ensemble-based scenarios that the National Weather Service uses, and it's a great tool in situations like this where you have some uncertainty. So what this map is showing you basically is uncertainty, where you see the highest colors or the brightest colors. That is where we have the biggest spread in our models on how much snow you're going to see out of this event. And a couple noteworthy places. One, right into here. This is where, that band of snow could potentially set up or could potentially be just offshore. And then also here into upstate New York, back down towards the Philly and New York City area. How strong is that original piece of energy going to be when it works on through? Is it going to be enough to produce some snow or not? And then same story down here into the mountains of West Virginia. Is there going to be enough energy to produce some winter weather? Now, when I say there's a high spread, let's just take a look at a couple places. Boston, the bottom 25th percentile of models say you don't even get snow out of this. The top 25th, the top 25th percentile or the 75th percentile say you get, 3 inches, and that would probably be the most you've seen so far this year. About a place like, let's see if we can, basically the same thing in here. But if you go just offshore here of Boston, look at this. We go from some models saying an inch, other models saying half a foot of snow. And that's when, the forecast becomes quite tricky when you have that sort of spread. Same story back towards Philadelphia and New York City. Philly, bottom 25th percentile say no snow. Top 25th percentile say you get 2 inches. How about New York City? Let's even zoom in here a little bit into kind of the Manhattan area. Same story. Bottom says 0. Top says about 2 to 3 inches. You go further north into northern Jersey, it will say Sparta here. Bottom says 1 inch. Top says 4 inches. So you get the point here. There's plenty of spread still in the models to go up to this event. And I know you're thinking, all right, well, it's only a couple days away. It's a complex setup, though. And if you remember back in November, if you were watching the channel then, we had that big upper level low. I think this is going to be similar in the sense somebody gets a big surprise. Somebody, let me draw something on here and do a little bit of a forecast live for you, if you will. Somebody right into this range right into here. Actually, let me redraw that a little bit. I'll do it like this. Somebody in this area is going to get surprised, okay? I think somebody in there is going to get more snow than they expect. Somebody's going to pull off some crazy number. Or when I say crazy, I don't mean like a foot or 2 feet, but somebody's going to get 6, 7 inches of snow who right now is thinking they might just get a dusting to a couple of inches. That I feel pretty confident in. The problem is, who is that going to be? And who's going to knock luck out? Who's going to, on the map right now, thinks they're going to get a couple of inches that maybe don't? And that's the fun of forecasting. That's also the annoying part. I know it's the part you folks hate hearing about, but it's just kind of the truth. And right now, that's where we're at. Now, I will tell you, I'll probably go live sometime in the next couple of days and break this down live for you. I know I've got plenty of viewers in the Northeast who are going to be intrigued by this, and we'll talk about it and break it down for you in a live, and I'll give you the details for that when I have it. But mean snowfall, kind of the blended models, if you will. You'll notice a couple highlights, again, just offshore and up into Nova Scotia. Unfortunately, this is the U.S. blended model, so it doesn't quite include all of Canada here, but you get the point. You know, a foot of snow is the mean here into the western portion of Nova Scotia there, in and around Boston. Like I said, that band of snow is going to set up. Can it set up a little bit further inland, and can we get some of these higher totals near 3, 4, 5 inches, half a foot? Not out of the question. The blend right now says about 3 inches in Boston. New York City, the blend says about 1 inch. Philly, the blend says about 1 inch. Up towards Scranton, closer to 3 to 5 inches. Same story up through Syracuse and Binghamton. Pretty good snowfall blend totals down here into West Virginia as well. We're talking a blend of, near half a foot into the higher elevations, and then even some snowfall likely into the mountains of North Carolina. So going to be a snowy time frame here. And I told you folks it was going to be a snowy pattern. I know the models, a couple days ago didn't look that great, but the pattern was supportive for snow, and it continues to be supportive for some snow, and even the first snow of the year potentially for some folks. All right, final thing we'll talk about here are temperatures and then Christmas itself. It's warm today. Here comes cool down number 1 tomorrow into Friday, and then the bigger cool down this weekend after all of this storminess. And that should last into early next week. And it's this time frame right around Christmas, right before Christmas. You see us warming up, but some cold air still trapped in the east. That's when we could get our next little storm system. And then after that, it looks to stay pretty warm through New Year's or so. Although you see some cool downs in there, but I think probably a warmer pattern for probably the week or so, maybe the 5-day period at least after Christmas. Now, what about Christmas Day itself? Well, here's the storm we just talked about. That works out of here, and then we quiet down a little bit. Maybe a little bit of lake effect, maybe some snow showers continuing on and off into the Northeast through the weekend. But early next week, right before Christmas, big time return flow out of the Gulf. This is really going to increase moisture values, and likely we're going to get a storm or two to form off of it. This is Christmas Eve morning. Let me back it up a little bit. Actually, this is Christmas Eve, the 23rd. A little storm system working across the Midwest could bring some snow to Wisconsin, Michigan, and then potentially even into the Northeast once more. And then probably some rain into the Southeast right around that Christmas time frame there on the GFS. European, a similar look here. A little storm system in that same region, same time frame. Different a little bit on the details here, but you get the idea. Something there around Christmas Day. We'll continue to watch it, and we'll keep you updated. But it does look like we could even see some snow Christmas Eve into Christmas Day for some folks, and that'll really just add some. But what I will say, if you get big snow out of this storm system, now I think it's going to be pretty likely that you get a white Christmas, especially in the Northeast. Now we might warm up a bit into the northern plains, but I think even into this area where we get half a foot of snow or so, you're probably locked in for a white Christmas. Southeast, Ohio Valley, this area, not going to happen this year, unfortunately. I'm not seeing really any good signs, to be honest. Maybe the highest peaks in North Carolina and into the Virginias, you could definitely have some snow left on the ground Christmas morning or at least Christmas Eve. But really, I would just enjoy the snow when it falls, if it does, into this weekend. Alrighty, folks, that's all I got for you. Hopefully you enjoyed it. A lot of information, a lot of things to talk about, a lot of possibilities, a lot of scenarios. So go easy on your meteorologists over the next couple of days in these areas that have that snowfall potential. Alrighty, folks, have a great rest of your day. Stay safe out there. I'll see you all next time.